How many times should you follow up with a prospect comes up all the time, and I want to make a really important distinction. And this distinction actually, I think, when made, clarifies the difference between a company that has ethics in sales and a company that doesn't, and that is qualification. So in my experience, when somebody qualifies, when a prospect qualifies as being interested, and what they would have to do to qualify depends on your industry. Let me give you a few examples. They might have downloaded something on your website and opted in with their name and the phone number. That would be a qualification of them being at least somewhat interested. They may walk into a showroom. I used to own a retail business where we had a showroom, and a human being walks into that showroom. That's like they're showing some interest, at least somewhat, that your product or service might work for them. Somebody has to put their hand up as being interested, and we call that qualification. Now, for those of you that are following me, or as part you're in my community, you will know that everything we teach here in the Elite Closing Academy is based around qualification. What I teach is not to just sort of run up to somebody in the street, rugby tackle and try and sell them something. Like, that's not what we're looking for at all. We're looking in the 21st century for prospects to be searching for you and moving towards you. Remember, nowadays you actually get selected in sales. Like, you get selected. So by the time they get to you, they've already checked you out. Some of the sales already over. They've looked at testimonials, they've looked at your website, they've read some of your blogs. Like, they're already checking you out. That's how it works. So firstly, before we get into how many times you should follow somebody up, this only applies if somebody has qualified as being at least somewhat interested. And again, one of the other things we're looking for is not just qualification, we're also looking to get super clear on who it's not for at the beginning. Click on this, opt into this if this is for you. And click on this or opt into this, like, don't click on this or don't opt into this if this is not for you. So like, it's for you if, and it's not for you if. So get that bit sorted. Now, once somebody has opted in, once somebody has qualified as being interested, then it is your job, the guide, the salesperson, to agree early on logical next steps. So never ever leave a conversation with somebody that showed an interest where nobody knows what's meant to happen next. Because if you have uncertainty in sales, what happens is, firstly, for the salesperson, they're a bit unsure, and that really creates some fear thinking, and we tend to hide behind email. And also, if somebody hasn't responded to an email once, you then start thinking, well, they haven't responded, so obviously they're not interested. That's not true, by the way. So, moving that to one side, it's important that you create follow-ups, logical next steps, micro commitments. We're looking for both parties to want to agree next steps. Now, there's something that I teach called agenda closing. So maybe if you're in the corporate space and there are multiple meetings that need to happen next, your job, before you have to follow them all up, is to create an agenda and put them in the diary, diarise them all, so that the follow-up is effortless. Now, if you're working in a smaller business, maybe you're an SME, maybe you're a sole entrepreneur of some sort, same applies. You might not need as many meetings, but what you do need to do is make sure you agree what happens next, or not at all. So that's a critical part of my philosophy. Now, after that, I think it's really important that you're fruitful in the follow-up. And what I mean by that is to never be a pain. So I live by the 3 Ps. I live by salespeople operating with qualified leads in a purposeful, professional and persistent manner. So I think, to get really clear, being persistent would involve voice notes, emails, text messages, phone calls. Like anytime you can use your voice, like a video note, a voice note, all of these things are really personable and they're really good skills in the follow-up. I just think you have to use some of your people skills here. It's interesting, recently I did some business with somebody who has been in my pipeline for 5 years. 5 years. Now, because we're fruitful and because we use multiple ways to follow up to clients that are interested in being in our pipeline and showing interest, then eventually after 5 years, the circumstances were right for us to do business. Now, how did we follow up? Well, we followed up by inviting her to masterclasses. We followed up by sending her emails. We followed up by sending her text messages. We followed up by sending her voice notes. We followed up by sending her phone calls every so often. So it's not like 5 times a day, and if you don't answer, I'm just going to keep ringing. Well, that's pushy. And that generally happens when somebody's not qualified. They don't answer the phone. So hopefully the skill here is for you, when it comes to following up, to be much more purposeful, much more professional, much more persistent, and to be more fruitful, like using multiple streams of following up, so that eventually, even if it's 5 years in my case, eventually when the time and the circumstances is right for someone to do business with you, that you are there in their attention, top of mind. And lastly on this, I've always used something called the elegant out. So it is your job. Marketers, you'll know this. Salespeople, you might have forgotten. It's your job every single time you have a communication with a prospect who's qualified themselves as being at least a bit interested. It is your job to make sure that you offer them an unsubscribe, to take them off the list, to never ring them again, and do it in an elegant way. And the way I do that, by the way, is I'll say to people, hey, it feels like I've followed you a few times now, and I'm really happy. If you want me to go away, that's cool. Well, I'm good. I'm good. If you want me to go away, I'm good. If you want to proceed, let me know how you prefer for us to communicate, and we'll continue to progress. So offer the elegant out, offer it every time. And again, when somebody doesn't take it, they're giving you a micro commitment that they are still interested. Lastly, remember, just because somebody didn't get back to you last time, it doesn't mean to say that they're not interested now. Life gets in the way, things change. So as long as there's been some interest, it's your job to be purposeful, professional, and persistent.